So you've got computers, and they're getting pretty cool in the 1960s, but computers are expensive as fuck, and only big companies and universities can afford them. And they all run different operating systems that don't talk to each other, which is stupid. So, some smart people at Bell Labs said, what if we made one operating system that could run on different computers? And they made Unix, which is pretty neat. AT&T was like, actually, we want money for this, and started charging people for Unix. And universities were like, bruh, we're poor. And programmers were like, this is bullshit. So this guy, Richard Stallman, got really mad about proprietary software, like really mad. So he started the GNU, 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 GNU project in 1983 and was like, I'm gonna make a completely free Unix-like system and you can't stop me. GNU stands for GNU's Not Unix, which is a recursive acronym because programmers think they're smart. Stallman created the GPL license, which is basically, you can use this code, but if you modify it, you have to share your changes too, no take-backsies. And he made a bunch of tools like compilers and text editors, but there was one problem. He didn't have a kernel. The kernel is like the heart of the operating system that talks to your hardware. Without it, you just have a bunch of tools sitting around doing nothing. Meanwhile, in Finland, there's this 21-year-old computer science student named Linus Torvalds. It's 1991, and he just bought a new computer with his fancy Intel 386 processor. But the only operating system he can afford is MS-DOS, which is basically digital cancer. He's been using Unix at university, and he's like, I want Unix at home, but I'm a broke college student. So, Linus decides, fuck it, I'll just write my own kernel. Not because he wants to change the world or start a revolution, he just wants to play around with his new computer. He starts coding in his bedroom, probably living off instant noodles and Sprite, and on August 25th, 1991, he posts a Usenet news group saying, I'm doing a free operating system, just a hobby, won't be big and professional like GNU. It was, in fact, going to be big and professional. He called it Linux, which is Linus plus Unix, but he pronounced it Linux, and everyone else says Linux, and we're still fighting about it today. He releases version 0.01 and it's basically garbage, but it works, and here's the cool part. He puts it under the GPL license so anyone can download it, modify it, and share it for free. Ding dong, it's the internet, well, sort of. It's mostly universities and nerds, but they're really excited about this free Unix-like system. Programmers from around the world start downloading Linux, fixing bugs, adding features, and sending patches back to Linus. It's like the world's most productive group chat, except everyone's doing it for free, and somehow it actually works. The GNU tools that Stallman made, they work perfectly with Linux. It's like peanut butter meeting jelly. Stallman insists we should call it GNU/Linux because his tools are doing most of the work, but everyone just calls it Linux because it's shorter and Linus is better at marketing than a guy who looks like a wizard. Companies start paying attention. Red Hat shows up in 1994 and is like, what if we packaged Linux nicely and sold support? And people buy it because businesses are scared of free software. SUSE does the same thing in Germany. Debian created the most democratic Linux distribution ever, where every decision is made by committee, which somehow works. Meanwhile, Microsoft is like, what the fuck is this Linux thing? Steve Ballmer calls it a cancer, and Bill Gates is probably stress eating. But Linux keeps growing. It's running on servers because it's stable and free. NASA uses it. The Pentagon uses it. Your router probably runs Linux and you don't even know it. But here's the thing. Linux on desktop computers is like that friend who's really smart and useful but weird at social gatherings. You have to compile your own drivers, edit config files, and sacrifice a goat to get your sound card working. Normal people stick with Windows because it just works, even if it crashes every Tuesday. Then, Ubuntu shows up in 2004, and Mark Shuttleworth, who's rich from selling his company, is like, what if Linux was actually easy to use? And Ubuntu's pretty good. It has a nice interface, things mostly work, and you don't need a computer science degree to install it. Suddenly, Linux doesn't suck on desktops anymore. But, plot twist, smartphones happen, and guess what Android is running on? That's right, Linux. Google took the Linux kernel, slapped their Java-based system on top, and suddenly billions of people are using Linux every day without knowing it. Linus is probably laughing his ass off somewhere in Portland. Apple releases macOS, which is based on BSD, not Linux, but it's still Unix-like. So now most phones and computers are running some form of Unix. Windows is crying in the corner. Microsoft eventually gives up and creates a Windows subsystem for Linux, because if you can't beat them, join them. Oh wait, we forgot about the distribution wars. So you've got Linux, but nobody can agree on how to package it. Red Hat uses RPM packages, Debian uses the DEB packages, and they hate each other's guts. It's like the Blu-rays versus HD DVD war, but with more neckbeards and stronger opinions. Gen 2 shows up and is like, what if you compiled everything from source code? And masochistic programmers are like, yes please, I love waiting 6 hours for Firefox to compile. Arch Linux appears and decides to be a hipster distribution. I use Arch, by the way, becomes the new meme, and their wiki is basically like the Linux Bible, and their users act like they discovered fire. Meanwhile, Linux Mint is like, what if Ubuntu but more boring? And somehow becomes super popular because people just want shit to work. The server world goes absolutely mental for Linux. Apache web servers running on Linux starts powering most of the internet. MySQL databases also on Linux. The .com boom happens, and guess what's running all those startups? Not Windows servers, that's for sure. Linux is like, I'm free, I'm stable, I don't crash when you look at it wrong, and I can run on a potato. Then virtualization happened, and Linux is like, hold my beer. VMware, Docker, Kubernetes, all running on Linux. Cloud computing arrives, and Amazon Web Services is basically Linux as a service. Google Cloud, Linux. Microsoft Azure, well, they tried Windows, but surprise, most of their cloud stuff runs on Linux now because even Microsoft gave up. Speaking of Google, they're like, what if we made a laptop that only runs web browsers? And they created Chrome OS, which is basically Linux pretending to be a web browser. It's perfect for schools and people who just want to check Facebook and pretend to be productive. But here's where it gets weird. Apple's iPhone comes out in 2007 and suddenly everyone wants smartphones. Google's like, shit, we need a mobile OS, and they're already working on Android. But Apple is suing everyone and their mother for patent infringement. The smartphone patent wars begin, and it's like World War III, but with lawyers instead of tanks. Linux doesn't give a fuck about patents though, because it's free, it's open source, and if you try to sue everyone using it, you're basically suing the entire internet. Good luck with that. Android becomes the most popular mobile OS on Earth, and Steve Jobs is probably spinning in his grave fast enough to power a small city. Then the Internet of Things happens, and suddenly your refrigerator needs an operating system. Linux is like, I got you fam, and starts running on literally everything. Smart TVs, cars, thermostats, door locks, and it's got a processor and connects to Wi-Fi. It's probably running Linux. Your Tesla, Linux. Your router, Linux. A smart doorbell that's definitely not spying on you, Linux. Container technology explodes and Docker becomes a hot new thing, and everyone's like, what if we put our applications in tiny little Linux boxes, and suddenly you can run 1,000 different services on one server, all isolated from each other. It's like apartment living, but for software. And it's still free. You can download it right now, modify it, and share it with anyone. Companies like Red Hat make billions selling support, but the code is free forever. It's like the ultimate communist plot, except it actually works and makes everyone's life better. Even Microsoft contributes to Linux now because they finally realized they can't beat it. Linus still maintains the Linux kernel, though he's mellowed out from his early days of telling people to fuck off in colorful ways. He's got a nice house, uses a MacBook for email, the irony, and occasionally emerges from his home office to tell people their code sucks. He's basically the benevolent dictator of the most important piece of software ever written. And that is the history of Linux, a college student's hobby project that accidentally took over the world one server at a time. It's proof that sometimes the best way to build something is to give it away for free and let everyone help. Who knew that sharing actually worked?